The Nintendo Entertainment System just turned 40. Can you believe it? This console arrived at a time when video games were on shaky ground, but it turned everything around with groundbreaking ideas, unforgettable classics, and a cultural impact that's still felt today. In this video, I'll share why the NES was so special and how it changed gaming forever. To really understand why the NES was such a big deal, you first have to look at what came before it, and it wasn't pretty. The video game industry in North America had completely crashed. Stores were flooded with cheaply made, misleading games, and there was no real system for quality control. Retailers lost confidence, shelves were filled with unsold cartridges, and many assumed video games were just another passing fad. At the same time, home computers like the Commodore 64, Apple II, and Atari ST were gaining ground. They could run games, sure, but they were complicated machines aimed more at hobbyists than kids. For families, especially those burned by the crash, there wasn't a clear reason to invest in another video game system. Nintendo's approach was different. In Japan, their Famicom was already a hit, but to succeed in the US, they had to convince skeptical retailers and customers to give video games another shot. So Nintendo didn't just sell a console, they rebranded it as the Nintendo Entertainment System, complete with toy-like peripherals like Rob the Robot and the Zapper light gun. They launched it carefully, starting with a limited test market in New York City in 1985, later expanding to Los Angeles, and finally going nationwide in 1986 with a lineup that included Duck Hunt, Excite Bike, Ice Climber, and Super Mario Bros. Nintendo slowly rebuilt trust, not just by selling games, but by promising quality, consistency, and fun. When the NES first hit shelves, its games had a very distinct look, the black box style. These packages had bold, simple artwork, often with chunky pixel graphics lifted straight from the screen. It was Nintendo's way of being upfront. What you saw in the box is what you'd actually play, a sharp contrast to the misleading art that had plagued earlier consoles. The early lineup leaned heavily on arcade-style design. Titles like Donkey Kong, Ice Climber, and Excite Bike were all about quick bursts of action, chasing high scores, and mastering simple mechanics. These games weren't sprawling adventures yet. They were closer to the coin-op experiences people already knew, only now brought into the living room. Developers were still learning what the NES could really do, so most of these early games stuck close to those arcade roots, fast, simple, and accessible. But as more developers experimented, it became clear that the NES wasn't just another arcade box at home. It was capable of bigger, deeper experiences, and soon, it would completely redefine what a video game could be. As developers grew more comfortable with the NES, they began pushing it far beyond those early arcade-style games. A big part of this leap came from new cartridge technology, especially the use of mappers, extra chips inside the game cartridges. These chips let games feature bigger worlds, more advanced graphics, and even battery-backed saves so players could continue their progress. This is what allowed the NES to evolve from quick score-chasing titles into true adventures. Super Mario Bros. Had already shown what was possible with side-scrolling action, but soon we got The Legend of Zelda with its sprawling overworld and hidden secrets. Metroid offered non-linear exploration, turning players loose in an alien world. And by the time Mega Man 2 came along, the system was delivering some of the most polished and ambitious action platformers ever made. Other hits pushed the system in different directions. Castlevania blended gothic atmosphere with precise platforming. Punch-Out turned boxing into a puzzle of reflexes and timing. And Contra delivered explosive run-and-gun action that was best enjoyed with a friend. Even lighthearted titles like DuckTales and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Arcade Game showed how varied and creative NES experiences could be. Nintendo also doubled down on quality. After the crash of '83, players were wary, but Nintendo's seal of quality became a promise that every game met a certain standard. Combined with strict licensing and control over who could publish on the NES, this rebuilt trust with consumers and retailers alike. Perhaps most importantly, the NES marked a shift in design philosophy. Games weren't just about racking up points anymore, they were about exploration, story, and lasting experiences. The NES was proving that video games could be more than a pastime. They could be worlds worth getting lost in. By the early 1990s, the NES was starting to look like a relic. The Sega Genesis and Nintendo's own Super Nintendo were showing off bigger, flashier graphics and more advanced sound. Compared to those 16-bit machines, the NES seemed primitive, yet it refused to fade away. Instead, its final years saw developers squeezing every last drop of potential from the hardware. Kirby's Adventure, released in 1993, stunned players with colorful visuals, smooth animations, and a clever copy ability that became a series staple. Mega Man 6, one of the later entries in Capcom's iconic series, pushed the NES's sprite handling to the limit while delivering some of the best level design in the franchise. And Battletoads, infamous for its difficulty, showed just how fast and dynamic NES action could be when coded by developers who truly knew the machine inside and out. Even as newer systems dominated, the NES's library kept growing, and its last wave of games stood as proof of how much could be done with limited technology in the right hands. Now here we are over 4 decades later, and the NES isn't just remembered, it's still part of the gaming conversation. Nintendo itself treated the system like a crown jewel of its history. Classic NES titles have been reissued time and again, first through the Virtual Console on the Wii, later with the NES Classic Edition mini console, and now as part of the Switch Online library. For Nintendo, the NES is living proof of where their empire began. Fans, meanwhile, have gone a bit further. Entire communities are devoted to keeping the NES alive through homebrew games, ROM hacks, and mods that stretch the system in ways unthinkable back in the 80s. The NES has become larger than life. The pixel graphics and chiptune soundtracks that defined it have become a timeless aesthetic, the very look and sound most people imagine when they think of 8-bit gaming. Today, the NES stands as a symbol of gaming's rebirth, showing how simple ideas, built with care and imagination, can shape generations to come. When you take a step back and look at it, the Nintendo Entertainment System wasn't just another console. It was the lifeline that brought video games back from the brink. After the crash of 1983, few believed home consoles would recover, yet the NES proved them wrong. It reignited the industry and set the foundation for everything that followed. It gave us some of the most important names in gaming history: Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, franchises born on this little gray box that are still shaping the medium today. What makes the NES endure isn't just nostalgia, though that's certainly part of it. It's the simplicity of the hardware forcing creativity, and the way its games still feel fresh and fun, even decades later. The NES is a symbol of resilience, imagination, and joy. For many of us, it was our first gaming system, our first step into worlds of adventure, challenge, and wonder. Even now, picking up an NES controller feels like shaking hands with history. Those springy red buttons, the click of the D-pad, it's all muscle memory for a generation of players. The games themselves might look simple today, but they were packed with ideas that still inspire modern developers. You can see the DNA of the NES everywhere, in indie platformers, in pixel art revivals, even in the way we talk about levels and boss fights. Its spirit never really left, it just evolved, right along with us. So thank you, NES. Thank you for saving gaming, for inspiring generations of developers and players, and for proving that something simple can change the world. 40 years later, your magic still shines. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe for more content like this. You might also enjoy this other video I made about retro gaming these days, discussing whether it's even worth it to try to get the old systems up and running. Check it out. Thanks for your time today. Goodbye.